Welcome to Zimbali Estate's podcast series, and we thank you for joining our conversation. My name is Shannon Vermaak, and our guests today are McPherson, renowned biologist and crowned eagle researcher, and Zamani Gwala, the environmental officer at Zimbali Estate. Welcome to you both. Thank you for joining our podcast today.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here, and I look forward to chatting about crowned eagles.
Hi, Shannon. Thank you for having us.
Zamani, Zimbali Estate is home to the beautiful African crowned eagle. Can you tell us about these majestic raptors?
Of course. The crowned eagle is a magnificent bird. It gets its name from the crest of feathers on top of its head, which looks like a crown. Crowned eagles are known for their strength and their size and have a wingspan of over 6 feet.
I believe they're exceptionally good hunters too.
The crowned eagle is an apex predator with great hunting skills. It has keen eyesight and powerful talons, which means it can take down prey much bigger than itself.
Wow.
At Zimbali Estate, these birds help keep the Zimbali Estate ecosystem in balance.
Interesting. Shane, we've been so fortunate to have a successful breeding pair of resident African crowned eagles at Zimbali Estate for many years. Can you give us some history about our crowned eagles?
Yes, in early 2012, I started my research project, and one of the first nests that I was informed about was the Zimbali Estate here by Jeff Nichols, who was the environmental consultant here. And he'd been tracking the breeding history of the pair for 6 or 7 years by that stage. And they were breeding almost every year during that time.
Okay.
And I've followed them for the last 12 years very closely, looking at their nest building, breeding, whenever they fail, and we're also putting ID rings on nestlings so we can follow their life history.
Zamani, we had a new chick hatch at Zimbali Estate a few months ago, and I believe you were lucky enough to see it up close and personal.
I did, and it was an amazing experience. And thanks to Shane for including me in my first close encounter with the crowned eagle. It was wonderful.
So many people from all over the world have been following the progress of our chick on the live stream on Zimbali Estate's YouTube channel.
Yes, we are very privileged to have a live stream camera at the nest site, and there's been so much interest in our crowned eagle chick. We've watched it grow and recently branch, and now everyone is waiting for a chick to fledge. It's very exciting.
Shane, although Zimbali Estate is a wonderful wildlife sanctuary for many bird species, it is still a residential area set within a densely populated urban precinct. How do urban landscapes pose unique challenges for African crowned eagles, especially in terms of nesting and breeding?
The crowned eagles are an endangered species, and their populations are declining throughout Africa. And it's really remarkable to have what looks like a significant population of crowned eagles in the Durban region. The crowned eagles in Zimbali Estate have been very successful in their breeding, and they're producing a chick on average almost every year. So when I first heard about the Zimbali crowned eagles in 2012, Jeff reported that they were breeding every year. That's quite remarkable. Crowned eagles are typically known in the equatorial regions to breed every second year. They're very slow to breed. Since 2012, I have continued to follow their breeding attempts, and recently they've had a few hiccups, especially with one of the adults being hit by a car on the highway. So it took a few years for them to get back into a rhythm with a new pair, and they're doing very well in the last 3 years, producing a chick every year.
So they obviously like our environment. What do you think is making them so successful in that regard?
What's interesting is that there are not any rock hyrax or dussies within their territory. Mm-hmm. And that's made an interesting contrast to all the crowned eagle pairs in Durban, where there's big populations of dussies living in storm drains and rockeries. And it's providing the crowned eagles here with an interesting challenge. They do compensate for the lack of dussies by hunting more monkeys.
Sure.
And a greater variety of different prey, mongooses and bush babies and all sorts of different things.
Even bush babies?
They're hunting bush babies by moving through dense foliage and just checking out roosting areas for the bush babies. That's how we think that they're catching a nocturnal species.
That's sort of unheard of, isn't it?
It's the first records of it, yeah.
Wow.
Zimbali Estate is a magnificent protected coastal forest and residential area, including a mosaic of the golf course and open space as well. And this is something that seems the crowned eagles are adapting to and utilizing. We think that young eagles that are born in the city learn to understand human patterns, movement patterns, and they can then occupy areas that were previously unavailable to more skittish, wild, remote wilderness crowned eagles.
So this really is the perfect scenario for them.
Yeah, they are a forest eagle, but throughout Africa they can use marginal forest and woodland as well, and even savanna if they find a really large, nice nesting tree along a riverine habitat.
Shane, Zimbali Estate's crowned eagles have been included in your studies and the juveniles that have become habituated to humans. Can you elaborate on the challenges and successes associated with our specific eagles?
It's a huge challenge, this habituation of young crowned eagles. On one hand, it's really wonderful to see the residents of Zimbali Estate and throughout Durban enjoying crowned eagles in their backyards and in their communities. This is great for protecting the birds. But there was a really serious issue that developed here in 2017, I believe, where we had a young juvenile just fledge out of the nest. And the Egyptian geese that will often use an abandoned tree nest to breed moved immediately into the nest 5 days after the eagle had taken its first flight. Now, the next few months, the adults still need to provide food for this juvenile. It's not capable of catching anything.
Sure.
With that first youngster, it was very fortunate that it ended up in a garden where the person wasn't immediately going to shoot it. And unfortunately, it's quite a common occurrence where young crowned eagles get shot in the city.
Has alien tree management, particularly the removal of eucalyptus trees, impacted on crowned eagle nest sites and breeding success? And can you tell us more about the approach adopted in regard to this at Zimbali Estate?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's an interesting one that eucalyptus are an invasive tree, and there's a goal of removing them from the waterways. But over 60% of crowned eagle nests are in eucalyptus trees in this region, in Durban. Eucalyptus trees grow very fast, very tall, and very big. They are easily available to crowned eagles building a nest because they form these little hands of branches that allow a solid foundation for the nest. They also have very smooth bark, which means that very few things can climb up. In most places, monkeys will harass a nest and a nestling on a nest. So the eucalyptus trees provide a secure nesting site free from harassment. And it was part of my early research to define these nest site characteristics and the selection that crowned eagles use to pick out good nest sites. Our recommendations for managing eucalyptus is that crowned eagles need a half dozen big trees in a small area where they can both build the nest and use perching sentry points to access the nest. So because crowned eagles have quite a small territory, often 2 kilometres between each breeding nest site, that's our recommendation for eThekwini municipality, is to preserve only very small groves of very large trees at 1 or 2 kilometre intervals along the rivers, providing great nesting sites for crowned eagles, but also African fish eagles, black sparrowhawks, and harrier hawks.
And yet here they're still choosing the eucalyptus, even though they have other options.
Yeah, they're choosing the eucalyptus, and they're very faithful to old nest sites. There is one remaining grove of eucalyptus trees by the lodge, and they've been protected because of the crowned eagles there. The rest of the estate has undergone a huge restoration of indigenous coastal vegetation, and these forests are incredible for the crowned eagles to hunt all the prey that they need.
And going back again to the same nest every year?
Yeah, they rebuild in the winter. They put new material on the nest, and it can be many, many layers or stratification deep. In the end of the breeding season, at the end of summer, we have seen on monitoring cameras this migration of millipedes into the nest to eat all of the detritus and rotting leaves and things in the nest. So there's a whole ecosystem around these nests which can be 1.5 to 2 meters wide and up to 3 meters deep.
You're currently involved in other research projects aimed at contributing to long-term conservation of these birds. Can you tell us a little bit more about that research and how Zimbali Estate's crowned eagles are part of it?
Yeah, so in 2012, I started my PhD, and we were looking at some of the fundamental questions about how many crowned eagles are in the city, what they're eating, what they're hunting, where the conflicts come from, and trying to establish whether their population is healthy or declining. We're still working on that, but I managed to reveal some really interesting questions. And the more you understand about it, the more precise the next questions are.
Yes.
So we have, since 2014, also included honours students and master's students to look at particular research aspects. And this year we've got a new PhD student to look specifically at really high resolution GPS tracking data of adult crowned eagles in their territory. Over the next few years, we want to attach GPS transmitters to adults in the suburban landscapes and see where they're hunting and what they're hunting. And Zimbali Estate, again, will provide an interesting comparison of a fully restored coastal ecosystem in amongst a Gulf estate and residential area, and how that compares to much less protected territories further in the Kloof and Westville suburbs.
Shane, are there any management strategies that can be implemented to mitigate the negative impacts of urbanization for crowned eagles, especially in terms of nest site protection?
I think there's already a form of natural selection going on with the population in terms of crowned eagles that can find nest sites in areas where they are pretty out of the way or undetected. Either that, or they're actually in a suburb or a particular garden where the people really enjoy them being there. And within a territory, the crowned eagles can find those places. In Zimbali Estate, the focus has been on protecting the crowned eagle's nest from their own internal protocols. And throughout Durban, there's not so much of a formalized system to protect the nests, except that we do share all of the locations confidentially with eThekwini municipality and with Ezemvelo KZN Wildlife. And so they know where the nests are, and when there's any official works to be done, we're contacted to look at how best to protect the nest tree or the territory so that the birds can successfully breed, and if work needs to be done, it's done outside of the breeding season. We also need to try and maintain good communication there with the boots on the ground that are ring-barking gum trees and felling them so that they don't cut down the nest tree or the immediately adjacent trees that are important to the crowned eagles.
Yes.
Typically, the crowned eagles are selecting sites within their territory. I think over a long period of time, they're discovering the places that are safe to breed. The main focus for us for protecting the nest sites is communicating with the neighborhood so that they understand the adult eagles have established a very good routine of hunting wildlife in the area. And then it's more important for us is to manage the conflicts of the juveniles, because those young birds have no experience in the world, and they can either become very habituated or they can become focused on hunting livestock and pets, which are abundantly available in the city. Our focus then is on a few individuals every year that might have impacts in the neighborhoods.
And what should we be doing to raise more awareness about the crowned eagles and mitigate this potential human-wildlife conflict?
Yeah, with the young eagles especially, we want to give them very good training while they're learning to become independent. And it takes them 3 to 4 years before they reach breeding age.
Okay.
So they leave their parents' territory and they wander around looking for food and looking for a place to breed once they mature. What's really important with these young eagles is that they shouldn't be encouraged to hang out in backyards, despite how much residents enjoy crowned eagles
Yes.
in their backyards. This is encouraging the eagles to search for food closer to houses, and that's a bad bias that can result in a lot more conflict. At Zimbali Estate, we're trialling an initiative where we scare the young eagle to not trust humans at close range.
Interesting.
Ground eagles are permanent residents within a very small home range, and they occupy those territories year after year. Durban City is a unique stronghold where we have over 30 breeding pairs in the eThekwini municipality, and we're still discovering more territories as we have time to survey more of the peri-urban areas. In the rest of Africa, there are many, many issues causing declines in the crowned eagle populations. Persecution is a main one, also competition for the same food resources. So the bushmeat industry, where monkeys and antelopes are removed from the forest, is in direct competition with crowned eagles. Also the use of forests for development and mining expansion and things like that. So the main task of maintaining the urban population is on a social level of humans' perception and reduction of conflict, leading to a long-term coexistence. And the longer that that can be maintained in Durban, the more significant that this urban population is globally for the species.
This has been a wonderfully interesting and insightful conversation. Thank you. We really do appreciate you giving us the opportunity to get to know more about these magnificent raptors that we are so fortunate to have at Zimbali Estate. And thank you for the roles that you both continue to play in the conservation of this iconic bird species.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you for having the opportunity to talk about what we're hoping to achieve as we move forward with this project.
For our audience, if you would like more information about this conversation or about the crowned eagles at Zimbali Estate, visit our website, zimbali.com. Thanks for listening.